So, verb time for Old English, and rather than kind of taking you through the magic sheet at this stage, what I need to do is to talk you through some fundamental vocabulary about verbs. It might be that if you've learnt Latin or are just clued up about learning languages, you'll have heard all these terms before. Have a look at the magic sheet, and if the sort of little terminology on the verbs section, he says, finding the verbs, if the terminology on the verb section all looks familiar, just skip this one, no problem. But if you're like, whoa, what's an imperative, what's an infinitive, what's a participle, hang on, I'm going to tell you. These are terms which are not conceptually hard. They're not conceptually hard like cases for nouns, but they are terms which you need to not only kind of half recognise, but you need to really understand and be able to use and be conversant with when you're working with Old English. So do take notes here, and I don't expect you to kind of digest this kind of instantly, but I do expect you to digest it pretty quickly. It's important to kind of get a sense of where we are with these verbs. So, one of our key terms and concepts for verbs is infinitive. The infinitive, this is the kind of basic form of the verb that you use in dictionaries to look the verb up under. So it's a pretty fundamental sort of part of dealing with looking stuff up, looking verbs up in Old English. An infinitive is a part of the verb that doesn't change its form, whatever else is going on in the sentence. What do I mean by that? Let's have a sentence with two verbs in. I want to walk. Want is a verb, it's an act, it's a doing thing. To walk. Walking is also a verb, action, fine. I want to walk. I wanted to walk. He wants to walk. The want bit changes its form. I want, I wanted, he wants. Different stuff happens to it. We call that a finite verb. It's a sort of inflected part of the verb. It changes its form. More on that in a minute. To walk doesn't change its form. I want to walk, I wanted to walk, he wants to walk. To walk is the infinitive. It doesn't change its form. Infinitives often, but not always, have to in front of them in modern English. So that might be a helpful way of thinking about it. And they come after other verbs, other finite verbs, other verbs that have changed their form. So that's your infinitive. I'll just glance at my magic sheet to remind myself what terminology we need to look at next. Let's have, okay, then it says inflected infinitive on the magic sheet. In fact, if you don't know what an inflected infinitive is, that's okay. They're very rare in Old English. They're kind of a verbal noun for those of you who are kind of tuned into that sort of terminology. But yeah, you can ignore that. If you're not familiar with that, but you're familiar with everything else on the magic sheet, stop the video now, you're okay. When we meet an inflected infinitive, I'll tell you about it. Present participle and past participle, that's more important. And I very much hope that the lights from the studio lights aren't interrupting your view of the board. Participle. A participle is a part of a verb that has been turned into an adjective. And we use these a lot in modern English. They correspond to things like the walking man, where you could say the yellow man, the blue man, the big man, the walrus-faced man, the walking man. You take the verb to walk and you turn it into an adjective by putting, in modern English, ing on the end. The ing bit's confusing because we use ing for a lot of stuff in modern English. Old English is actually more straightforward. They just have one ending, which is ender, like Old English, creo, ender, creeping, the creeping man, the creopender man. And then they put adjective endings on the end, just like we saw for the other normal adjectives. Past participle are verbs that have been turned into adjectives. That's the concept that needs to be remembered. Present participles have present reference, and that's the example that I've been using so far. The walking man. The man is present at the time of his being a man, also walking. He is walking Unlike, for example, the broken dog. The breaking dog is breaking here and now. The broken dog is already broken. The breaking happened in the past. So present participle has present reference. The walking man ends in ing in modern English, ender in Old English. Past participles, which are actually a bit more common, have past reference. They end in a lot of different stuff in modern English. They are things like the broken dog. I don't know why this dog is broken. Maybe it's a robot. The broken dog. The wanted criminal. The shot dog. Okay, it's a bit of an unusual sentence. Alaric shot the dog. The shot dog nonetheless leapt up and bit Alaric. Or something. All of those words have different forms, different endings. You've got un on the end of broken, id on the end of wanted, or id. Nothing on the end of shot. They're all past participles, however. They're all describing a noun. They're functioning as adjectives. The broken dog, the blue dog. Why is my dog broken and blue? I don't know. Never mind. So past participles come up a lot. Again, they've got a more kind of stable form in Old English. They end in en plus adjective inflections. So they're like broken, basically. They take the broken type form. No, that's not always true, actually. Sometimes they also have an odd ending, like the wanted type. Broken, wanted, both forms are there in Old English. Never mind. And we use past participles a lot in conjunction with the verb have. So things like, I have broken the dog. I have shot the dog. I will have shot the dog. Past participles come up a lot in verbal constructions when we're talking about things that have happened in the past, usually with the verb to have. Sometimes also with the verb to be, particularly in Old English. I am arrived, as it were. You can just about say that in a kind of Shakespearean way, perhaps. You can do it in Old English. Infinitives, participles, hopefully you're okay with that. Listen to it again if you're not. Just a couple of other quick things, hopefully. One is the idea of mood for verbs. Yes, verbs have moods, isn't that weird? It's easier to kind of give examples of this than to describe it in the abstract. Most verbs, most of the time, are just telling you something straightforward about the state of the world. They're not trying to change the world, they're not lying to you, they're not hypothesizing, they're just statements. I walked to the shops. I actually walked. It's just a statement of fact. I walked to the shops. And those are, hang on, what am I writing? Subjunctive, indicative. Those are called indicative verbs, normal verbs. And you don't really need to learn the word indicative as such because it just corresponds to normal. It's just the basic situation. There are two other moods, which are slightly trickier. One is the imperative. Imperatives try to change the world. They're commands. They, in a sense, have an exclamation mark after them, if that helps. They're things like, get out, or learn, or, I don't know, go, etc. Old English has these two. They look a bit like the infinitive with the infinitive ending knocked off. You can explore that in due course. So imperatives are commands. Finally, and kind of most trickily, we have subjunctives. And this word covers a multitude of sins in different languages. So the use of a subjunctive will vary in French, Latin, German, Old English. But it's a form of the verb that's used when you're dealing broadly with conditions of uncertainty, with hypothetical conditions. In modern English you can say, I might go to the shops. It's not saying I go to the shops, it's saying I might go to the shops. I would go to the shops if you gave me your car. These are hypothetical situations, they're not statements of fact. And in circumstances like that, Old English will use subjunctive verbs, subjunctive forms of the verb. So you just need to be conversant with those terms. You need to be able to use them